Hello, Algebra 1. This is Mrs. Ramirez, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about Topic 1, Skill 1, which is solving 1- and 2-step equations. This is a very fundamental skill that we need to have for the rest of the year to be successful. So we're going to practice this and make sure that we get it really good. First word I want to talk about is this word equation. An equation, it's really important to know, has an equal sign. If you have something that has an equal sign, we call that an equation. So for example, 4x equals 16 is an equation because we have the equal sign. But if I have something like 5x minus 8, that is not an equation because there is no equal sign anywhere to be seen, so this is not an equation. Our focus is going to be on equations, so ones that have equal signs, and solving for the variable to figure out what it needs to be for that equation to be true. You can pause this part if you want to read through this on your own, but the big picture is that to solve an equation we have to use inverse operations. Another way that we've said inverse operations in the past is by doing the opposite, but we're really going to try and use good math vocabulary and say inverse operations. So inverse operations basically are the operations that undo each other. So if you add something, the inverse is going to be to subtract it, and if you subtract something, the inverse is to be to add it. Same with multiplying and dividing. Those are inverses. They undo each other. So we're using that to solve. And then balancing is the way that we're going to be able to do that versus the cloud method, which most of you do at this point. So we're starting off really simple. I'm going to do the one in white first. X plus 4 equals 9. Many of us can just look at that and see the answer, but we are going to work through the process just to make sure that we understand the steps that go with it to make sure when it gets harder we can do those same steps. So what I'm going to notice is this. I notice that to get x by itself, this plus 4 needs to move. So I notice, okay, plus 4, I have to use that inverse operation. The inverse of a plus is going to be a minus. So to move this plus 4 to the other side, I'm going to minus 4. And I have to do that on both sides to make sure that my equation stays balanced. What's going to happen is plus 4 and minus 4, those cancel out, and so what's left over here is just my x. And then I can take this 9 minus 4 to get 5. X equals 5. That is my answer. Now for the red example, 6k equals 24. So first thing I need to understand is that the math that's going on in between 6 and k is a multiply. So this is really saying 6 times k. And when I understand that, that allows me to do the inverse operation. So I find my k. This 6 is what's allowing the k to not be all by itself. So the opposite of multiplying by 6 is going to be a dividing by 6. And we are going to do that dividing with the fraction bar. Okay, I'm going to do that every single time. So that dividing by 6. And if I do it on one side, I have to also do it on the other. So I'm going to divide the other side by 6 as well. So since these are inverse operations, they cancel each other out, they undo each other, so they go away. What's left on this side is going to be my variable k. And then I just have to do a little bit of math right here. 24 divided by 6 is 4. So k equals 4 is that answer. We also wanted to expose you guys to a little bit more difficult by doing all variables. Now the process still stays the same. So if I'm trying to solve for a and get a by itself, what I want to do is move the b. Now how do I move that b? Well, I still have to look at the operation. Right now I'm adding b, so the opposite of a plus b is a minus b. Opposite of plus is minus. Inverse of plus is minus. And if I minus b on this side, I also have to minus b on this side. So just like our other example, plus b and minus b are going to cancel out, which is perfect because that leaves a all by itself. Now what's left is c minus b on the right-hand side. And what I know is that I don't have numbers for those, so I can't really plug those into my calculator. I can't do that math. I can't simplify them at all because they're not like terms. So I'm just going to leave it as C minus B. That's my final answer. Now we're going to move on to two-step equations. So our last ones were one step. It only took one step to solve it. Now we're going to take 2 steps. The hardest part about two-step equations is figuring out which inverse to do first. Now the way that I teach it is I look at which number is farthest away from the variable. So if I look at this first example in blue, if I read it, I say n divided by 2 minus 5 equals 0. So what did I say last, or what did I say farthest away from n is going to be this minus 5. So that's what I'm going to get rid of first. The inverse of minus 5 is plus 5, and I have to do that to both sides. Because these are inverses, they cancel out. But this time I'm not all the way done. I have n minus 2 left over, so I'm not quite done. But I can still simplify 0 plus 5 is going to be 5. Now I can look, the opposite of dividing by 2, since that's not done yet, is going to be multiplying by 2. Multiply by 2 on the other side. Those will cancel out, so n is left by itself. 5 times 2 is 10. N equals 10 is my answer. Next one, if I read that, it says a minus 3 divided by negative 4 equals 1. So what I said last, and what's farthest away from my variable a, is going to be this dividing by negative 4. So that's what I have to do the inverse of first. Opposite of dividing by negative 4 is multiplying by negative 4. And I have to do that to both sides to stay balanced. Since those are inverses, they cancel out. So I have a minus 3 left over. I'm not quite done, so we have to bring it all down to the next step. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. Now, again, I'm not quite done because a is not by itself. So now I have to get rid of the minus 3. Inverse of minus 3 is plus 3. Plus 3 on both sides. Those inverses cancel out. Now I'm left with a all by itself. Negative 4 plus 3, if you go to your calculator, you get negative 1. That's all we got. Have fun practicing.